Hello Internet and welcome to the show Do You Physics? Today we're going to be discussing nuclear explosions happening inside your pets, Amazon's teleporter shipping options, and the reincarnation of your dead grandmother. I'm HamsterBomb, joined today by Kimothy, and of course we're talking about the Pokeball.
Oh yes, because that made sense.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What did you think I was talking about?
Oh, I really had no idea there.
No, I didn't want to let Kim know before we were talking about this what we're going to be digging into, but
it just reminds me of the conclusion I came to the other day that your Pokemon needs to explode. And
yes, basically we're gonna get into all that in today's episode. Basically, what we're gonna be doing in this series, Do You Physics, is we're gonna be looking at video game logic of things that really we just kind of accept in video games. We don't ever really stop to think about what it means. If a Pokeball, for example, was in the real world, what kind of technology would have to go behind that, and what does that mean if that exists, and can it exist?
And how close we are to it.
And how close are we, yes, to having something like that happen? So, I already spoiled or kind of talked about 3 conclusions or things we're going to be talking about to make this just come a little bit closer. But for now, the first thing we want to do is Kim was actually digging into a lot of what Bulbapedia says specifically about what a Pokeball is, and we're just going to go from there and just try and dissect this.
When I came to researching, I couldn't quite figure out exactly what I needed to research, so I thought, I'll just start with the definition.
Well, yeah, that's a great place to start.
So, the definition of a Pokeball via Bulbapedia is when a Pokeball hits a Pokemon, as long as it's not deflected, the Pokeball will open, convert the Pokemon into a form of energy, pull it into its center, and close.
Now, just stopping right there.
Right there.
I know
okay.
we're going to keep going farther and farther. Okay, so the first thing that I know it'll get into a little bit later about what happens if this Pokeball hits not a Pokemon.
Yes.
And in the anime, I don't know how far we can move from the game logic to an anime.
Well, luckily the Bulbapedia, the definitions on here combined both.
I know it combined both, and I don't know what
aspects.
we should do, because the show does some different things than the game does. So, should we assume we're just going to take everything we know about the Pokeball and assume it's all kind of canon? And because in the show,
the Pokeball, I think itself we can consider canon.
Yeah, and in the show, I think in the first series, Ash on accident catches, like, what is it? What's that Japanese donut thing that they eat? What is that?
Onigiri?
Yeah, that thing. He catches one of those.
Donut.
Yeah, whatever the heck it is. It's like a rice.
It's
like a rice ball in a triangle shape. I don't know what it is. Whatever. So, but other things other than was it converted to energy?
Yes.
When he captured that. Okay, so
I believe so, yes.
So that's what I was trying to establish first, because we're going to get into later of how do you convert matter into energy, and if so, what would happen to it on the inside? What would it do when it's converted back out in the other world? We'll get into that stuff later, but I'm just trying to establish, so if one captured anything, because it shouldn't just be a Pokemon.
Right,
if you captured anything.
The definition gets into later about it hitting other things.
All right.
So
yes, exactly. I just wanted to establish that first. Go ahead. Let's keep going.
So, a Pokemon in this state is given a chance to struggle, to attempt to break free from the ball and escape, being instantly reconverted from energy into matter.
Oh my gosh. I love how Bulbapedia actually said that. But first thing I wanted to mention was about the struggling inside the ball, because based on the science, once again, that we will dig more into later about the actual energy conversion of what you would do, the struggling I find pretty hilarious, because it would be completely pointless.
You gave a pretty good reason as to why that would happen, and it's pretty much because of the designer who made the Pokeball being a jerk.
Yes, well, the whole idea, the only way the Pokemon would be able to struggle, because the only thing that you could compare, because at that point it's not conscious if it's energy. I'm sorry, it's not. We don't really fully understand what consciousness is yet, and we're not going to get into that. But to be fair, you don't have the ability to fight back or do anything if you're just energy. That's like saying that the light is angry at you, or the light is happy with you right now. I'm sorry, it's not. So the only thing is every Pokeball really has the ability of just being a Master Ball. They are Master Balls, except the person who made it just basically made a code inside that said, this is a Stantler, and it's going to have a capture rate of, 45 or 60 or something like that?
But you know what that also implies? Is that the creator who made the Pokeball has DNA from every Pokemon out there, although your professor sends you out to find Pokedex entries of Pokemon that he doesn't know exist.
Once you convert it to light, though, the DNA doesn't exist anymore. But it would have to instantly recognize it, you're right, and figure out what it is, and in addition to that, figure out how much energy, potential energy, it has left. Because what I think is, Pokemon has been putting it lightly. If a Pokemon is knocked out in battle or is fainted, they're dead. They are dead. You ever wonder why you can't, like, take a fainted Pokemon in the wild? Say you ran into a wild shiny, and you're really excited. You found a shiny Pikachu. You're really excited. You're trying to catch it and weaken it, but you accidentally get it poisoned, and it dies. It dies. It doesn't just faint. It keels over and it's dead. You can't just take it somewhere else. It won't go in the Pokeball anymore.
You can't just pick it up and take it with you.
Right, and for the reincarnation bit of what I was going to talk about in the beginning, that's basically taking something to the Pokemon Center, which we're not at yet.
Right.
So let's go on. I just wanted to point out how stupid the struggle is.
The struggle was. I don't think that'll come back up again.
No,
I just wanted really our focus. For
right.
this video,
I wanted to shelve the struggle of how dumb that is, but okay.
So the next part's just demonstrating, should a Pokemon escape from a Pokeball, the device will either be destroyed, and that's according to the game only, and according to the anime, it'll return to the trainer.
Which is just bizarre.
Who can attempt once again to try to catch the Pokemon. I realize now there was a description I had read through, but I didn't put on here as one to read, which it mentions that in the anime, the Pokemon jump in and out of its ball. Now, wouldn't that destroy it in this instance? If according to that?
Well, no, because then every single time you send out your Charizard into battle, you destroyed his Pokeball and he's wild again. So, no, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's trying to register something specifically to that container, is what it's trying to say, which is fine. I think we would be able to, like, assuming this technology works out, which we're going to get into science once we're able to finally finish this, but I think it could register something. And the breaking, that's just a game mechanic to make you buy more Pokeballs. That's not, like, a technology thing. Besides, once it's there, it's not going to break. Unless nuclear fusion destroys it, which another thing we'll get into about
get into that.
The energy conversion madness that they said, turning energy into matter.
Another thing that we don't really have too much, I guess, to elaborate on with the next description is Pokeballs are not always at full size. Now, Bulbapedia did not say specifically if this is just the anime or
that's
the
just an
manga
anime
game,
thing.
but
Yeah, I don't know. The manga might have done that, but I don't think the manga's canon. Who cares? But the
manga actually has red.
Pokemon doesn't have a canon anyway. Who cares?
That's true.
So and we're just looking at the technology of it, and mostly focusing on the video game. That never happens when like they touch the little button on the Pokeball and it just like goes from like a ping pong ball size to like a grapefruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that that's actually changing how much matter is there. And
right.
The anime clearly doesn't care about that when you see like Staryu jumping up and he like shoots out a air quotes water gun and then there's just this torrent of water that shows up out of nowhere coming out of like one of the points of the star.
There's a few dex entries trying to explain where that matter is contained in their body.
Sure. Okay. Whatever.
And then the next thing on here we have when a Pokemon is sent out from a Pokeball. It will be accompanied by a distinct sound effect and a bright light as it returns from its energy form and materialize nearby, often on the ground. Its bright light has been shown to vary depending on the type of ball in which the Pokemon is contained in the games, while it has always been shown to be white in the anime.
That's kind of really...
Yeah.
Well, I know when you send someone out of the ball, yeah.
Different, from what I remember, they didn't really ever experiment with different balls too much in the anime anyway. Like
okay,
netball, love ball.
Assuming that the Pokemon was correctly converted into light, changing its color is really just the wavelength. changing, how much it's vibrating. So, and that's a very subtle change in the whole spectrum of, going from like gamma rays, X-rays, and all sorts of crazy, like very slow to very rapid.
Right.
The visual spectrum is so small, so those little changes that's nothing in comparison to the rest of the stuff that this actually really does.
So it actually goes on to the different meanings of the types of lights that you'll see when it comes out of the Pokeball. But I believe that's only with the anime.
I was going to say, I've never heard this.
Pokemon are recalled to the Pokeball by holding up the Pokeball with its button pointed at the Pokemon.
Okay.
A beam of red, white, or blue light will shoot out from the button, converting the Pokemon back into energy and returning it to the ball. The beam, however, has a limited range and can be dodged by the Pokemon. If the beam hits a person, it will be stunned for a moment, but aside from that, no ill effects will make themselves apparent.
Okay, now that all just sounds like anime logic, and it's not anything that has anything to do with the game. The game never does that. If you want to retreat your Pokemon, they're retreated. If you want to send them out, they're out. And you're not going to do anything with catching people. Though, in the original game, if you catch Missing No and have it sent to your box, I believe, his icon is a person. Yes.
Really? That's weird.
And if you're surfing, this is a glitch though. If you're surfing on Cinnabar Island, you can find wild trainers. I have fought some trainers, wild encountered yes. There's a lot of crazy weird stuff, but so that's the actual game. But still, the logic of the anime, I don't think we should be taking too much into account. There's a lot more interesting stuff. Like we've kind of passed up. And I don't know how much more this goes into the actual conversion of the Pokemon's light into matter. I think we should stop beating around the bush and start talking about what that is.
I just have one more point to point out from here.
Go ahead.
One that I thought was very relevant when I was going through this. It's Pokeballs are able to communicate with the trainer's Pokedex. As the system updates itself with information on newly caught Pokemon and keeps track of how many Pokemon the trainer has with them. If a trainer catches a new Pokemon with full 6 already with them, the Pokedex will automatically send the newly caught Pokemon in its Pokeball to the storage system that the trainer is using.
That is a whole other thing, and that gets into what I want to talk about of Amazon's new teleportation services.
Right.
Because that's exactly what that is. That's teleportation.
Right.
Yikes. How about, before we even get into how that works, we need to understand, first off, because I think you just hit the end of Bulbapedia, right?
Right. That is all of the...
Okay, so now we can start trying to...
definition.
Decipher this. So let's get into how it's transferred second. The first thing I think we need to figure out is how do you actually convert living organic matter, which am I jumping too far to assume that a Pokemon is living organic matter? You don't know?
I don't know.
Because, I mean, it's almost safe to say that this could be like a Digimon world where they're actually like somehow digital information.
I don't believe that's true with the way that they react, though. Because with the Digimon world, you're actually being transported to a digital world.
That's true.
So that's different.
You're in the computer. Yeah, it's not always. I thought sometimes they actually come out of it. No?
Well, they can, but it's only certain circumstances.
Okay. Which reminds me of Porygon. I had to bring up Porygon in this one because Porygon's big thing, I don't have his dex entry in front of me, but basically it says every single time, Porygon's special ability is he is able to convert himself into digital information and travel the cyberwebs and come back out. And you're like, well, that's cool, Porygon, because according to this, every single Pokemon can do that.
Good for you, Porygon.
You are not special.
No, the best thing, don't lie to him.
The best thing Porygon can do is something that every other Pokemon can already do and just didn't stop to think about, oh, well, I guess I could do that. It's like, hey, I'm really great at breathing.
He's like that one...
I am the best at breathing. Did you know that?
Yeah, he's like that one friend you gotta tell that to.
Yeah,
oh, that's so good,
You're
honey!
You're so good at breathing! I'm so proud of you! No, I feel bad for Porygon. And especially his upgrades slowly corrupt him and destroy the program. But anyway, so poor Porygon got the shaft of that one, but...
Porygon's seeming less and less cool by the second.
Porygon's the only one that I would assume, yes, he's digital information that's somehow incarnated in the world, right? But everybody else, every other thing, we can assume they are living, organic matter.
Yes,
okay,
I believe so.
If that's the case, how about, for this instance, we're just going to take this into the real world and say, you run into a deer, okay? And you want to catch this deer with a Pokeball, right?
Right.
Now, let's assume we have a real Pokeball. This ball that we're going to throw and hit the deer with is going to immediately convert the deer into energy. It didn't specifically say light.
It just says energy,
It says energy. It's going to convert it to energy and suckle that energy that it just converted into the ball.
Yes.
And then based on a joke algorithm, give you a chance of whether the ball is broken or not.
Right.
And for the sake of this argument, let's say it stays.
Always stays.
Okay. So it converts this deer into energy, and then at that point you are able to pick up the ball, and at any other point later, throw the Pokeball. The deer would be able to come back out. And another thing I always loved about Pokemon, they completely forget the fact that they had freedom before, and now they have slavery.
Yes.
And they don't seem to care.
Well,
but they love their trainers.
That was something that was kind of mentioned in one of the definitions, was that once it's in the Pokeball, it's always connected to that Pokeball, unless the trainer decides to release it.
Yeah, and you said something about it's supposed to be like a wonderful, comforting environment.
Yes, I did read it. It's supposed to be alluring to Pokemon. So
which I'm calling BS on, because why would they fight so hard to get out of it? You know? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It makes no sense at all. You're like, this place is great. Let me out. I hate it in here.
Maybe it's just like the ones with the lower catch rate like the inside a lot more, whereas the ones with the higher catch rates, like Mewtwo, don't like that Pokeball.
Right. It's like how much do you value your freedom in the wild, where you have to fend for yourself, versus this near utopian blissful slavery? Which do you want? And then you're deciding
where
which
you're forced to battle.
Yeah, well, occasionally you'll dogfight, and if you have the best of opportunities, you could be that Pokemon where the guy, your trainer says, you know, it's cool, just fill in the dex, put it in the box, and then you're just forever in that blissful digital state of whatever that is.
Right, yeah.
So let's back up a bit. Let's talk about the actual science.
Conversion of turning organic matter into energy and energy back into organic matter.
So some people might immediately throw up some red flags and say, hold on, what about the fact that matter cannot be created nor destroyed? Because all of a sudden there was a deer and now there's no deer.
Right.
Right? Where is the deer? Well, that's kind of a misinterpretation of what that law actually was. I've actually got a little snippet from physicscentral.com that I'm going to read about that. So, quote, here's what they say about this. The first law of thermodynamics doesn't actually specify that matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but instead that the total amount of energy in a closed system cannot be created nor destroyed, though it can be changed from one form to another, end quote. So they're basically saying, yes, that deer, that would happen. That could actually happen if you had the technology to, you know, snag and do this kind of thing.
Convert it perfectly into energy.
We're not even getting to the part where you can reconstruct it yet. We're just saying, like, imagine step one, you're going to make a beta Pokeball that basically just disintegrates something and sucks it into the ball, and that's it, right? If we can get that far, that's possible. You could do that. You could actually... we'll get into how because I know you have some things to talk about of how nuclear fusion is almost like the only way to convert matter into light, because or energy, really, matter into energy. Some people are saying, like, how on earth could that happen? But really, one quick answer is just look up at the sun. The sun's doing this all the time.
Right.
The sun is taking a bunch of particles and elements, and it is super compressed inside of all of this gravity, crushing them together, and it's basically splitting the atoms and causing nuclear fusion. And that's why it's like consistently burning and pushing back out again. It's turning matter into light and energy and photons and wavelengths, right? So that, though it requires a tremendous amount of force and energy.
Exactly, yes.
It does that.
And then where do we get that energy from inside of the Pokeball?
So a Pokeball is, like, how powerful? Do you have something on this?
Well, yeah, see, I was just thinking about the, in order to convert matter into energy, the conversion laws. This is the one thing that I looked up.
Yeah, go ahead and read what you got.
So, in order to convert matter into energy requires us to get past a few conversion laws. These are the conversion laws that keep us from turning into energy just whenever.
From just turning into energy whenever we want. Yes.
Explode into energy if we wanted to. There's a conversion law that says the total number of protons plus neutrons has to stay the same forever, which is what you're saying about the matter when it changes from one to the other.
As soon as you break that up, and there's multiple ways to do that, like I just said, the sun can do it because of intense gravity.
Yes.
You would need a tremendous amount of force in order to disrupt it.
Here on Earth, that is nearly impossible.
No, we've done it. And we've done it over some very large cities in Japan.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
But I'm saying at the small size that we want to.
Oh, goodness, no.
With the Pokeball.
Well, I mean, granted, those original bombs were designed to be huge. And we kept making them bigger and bigger with more and more megatons in them so that they could be more and more devastating. I mean, I didn't dig into this one in particular, but it could be possible that you could actually go farther backwards and try and make the smallest nuclear explosion possible in order to make it just happen so that it disintegrates.
Like a second. Just like a split second.
Well, not even
reaction.
just that. So it just disintegrates just what it grabs. But the problem is, once it's like a chain reaction. It's like you can't just drop a cannonball into a swimming pool and say, I'm going to make one with no ripple.
Right.
You know, it's gonna disintegrate. It's gonna blow up, and it's gonna cause a lot of destruction.
So we should just assume that when we catch a Pokemon, we're gonna lose a few trees and a few other things around in the area.
Probably your neighborhood. Yes.
Yeah,
It will look like a skating rink.
So there is going to be a small nuclear explosion every time you catch Pokemon.
Basically, yes. Every single time, but I don't think I could justify how they're doing it on such a small scale, but scientifically, it's possible. Like, if you completely disregarded, like, if we wanted to capture, how about an alien on his alien planet? Since we're ignorant aliens to them ourselves, we don't care about his city.
We're savages.
We're just gonna chuck a Pokeball his way, destroy his entire city.
Does this destroy the Pokeball in turn, though?
You know, we can create stuff that will block that, but that we're talking about the most expensive piece of equipment known to man, a single Pokeball. And the best part, I want to keep reminding you, it has a program in it to randomly break when it's trying to capture something, because that's up to the Pokeball. That is
what happens if the Pokeball breaks? Then does it still just explode? Like, do we get an even larger nucleer explosion?
Right.
So you get the first nuclear explosion from catching it, and then it explodes, and then it blows up again.
So, okay, I think it's safe to say we've kind of touched on the energy of turning it into the ball. There's some hoops we gotta jump over unless you have some more stuff.
Right, well, that's the thing I don't remember the name of the website. It was some physics website I was looking at.
Somephysicswebsite.org.
Somephysicswebsite.org. Okay. Where it talked about using Hawking radiation to keep that energy constantly consistent from one to the other versus using nuclear power.
I would have to dig into that one. I mean, you're kind of dropping this one on me right now. Basically, what Hawking radiation is this theorized particles that Stephen Hawking came up with and eventually proved their existence of to explain how black holes are not completely destroying matter and breaking physics. What's really happening is say there's a black hole sitting, I'm going to make this super small, assume it's like the size of a basketball floating right in front of you, and say a baseball comes flying in from the side and goes right into that black hole. The black hole, right, got bigger.
Yep.
But how come eventually, if you keep waiting, say over hundreds of years, that black hole is going to get smaller and smaller? Well, technically, if it was that small, it would be gone in an instant, but let's just say it does. Say it's going to get smaller and smaller and eventually vanish.
Right.
What happened? That destroyed matter. What happened to the baseball?
Right.
Right? So what actually is happening, because even though the black hole is not letting anything escape, even light, there is still radiation that kind of peeks out and slowly is disintegrating around the black hole, and that gets out.
And I believe
that's Hawking radiation.
Talking about Hawking radiation and the nuclear are two different ways we could develop a Pokeball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, saying...
That sounds much safer.
Right, it doesn't sound like as big of an explosion, but it also
it
sounds...
still requires super intense gravity, which...
Because this way you can feed it matter, it can hold the matter, and then spit it back out at a later time.
Yeah, right.
In simpleton's terms, right?
Well, spit it back out at a later time. That's another problem. But did you have anything else before we moved on from just converting them into energy?
I think converting them into energy... I have more on converting them back, because that's a little
that's a lot
easier.
Oh, easier?
Yeah.
You're nuts. That's harder. That's
See,
why...
I found way more information proving from turning light into matter than turning matter into light.
Well, because turning matter into light isn't something that people are like, how do you do it? We all kind of know how to... Well, okay.
Right.
Scientists are like, well, of course,
daily.
we know how to do it. Yeah, well... It's happening all the time. It's happening right now. Everywhere in the universe, most of the universe is stars just constantly converting matter into light.
Right, and I don't even know
how do you go
backwards,
right? That's the thing. So is all the matter in the universe slowly being turned into light and energy, and eventually we'll run out of it and just have light and energy and then nothing, right? So that's the question. Can you go back once you do that? And we've got them in the Pokeball. So say we've captured our deer. The deer has been converted into
There has been a small
energy.
nuclear explosion.
Let's use technology that we currently do not understand and say that it did not destroy the entire forest. It just got the deer. And when it just got this deer, not only did it suck up that energy, but it also, because you mentioned about the Pokedex and other things I'm going to mention later, it also had to completely analyze the structure of the atoms and everything about that deer. The DNA.
Has to save that
It saves all of that information because that deer is not a deer anymore. It's energy. And when you send it back out, it needs to reconstruct the deer. And if it's going to reconstruct that deer, you need to make sure that when it sends it back out, it's not a tiger. And it's not maybe you caught a doe and it sends out a buck. You know, it got the right species, but the gender's wrong, or maybe the size is wrong, or the age is wrong. How do you know? It's going to have to get this so accurate that it's got to be able to piece every single atom back together after it split them.
Right, right. So it has to save this information somehow.
Yes. And that's a ridiculous amount of information, but let's just say it does.
Which is where we get to nuclear weapons again.
Right, yay.
And I would have done more research on nuclear weapons, but I didn't quite feel comfortable on typing in... creating a nuclear bomb on the internet.
You didn't want the CIA showing up at our door?
Right,
That's
yeah.
a good
I
idea.
didn't feel comfortable typing that in. So the only information that I found with nuclear energy was inside of articles where I typed in converting light into matter.
Okay, so let's say we want to send that deer back out. Go ahead, just hit us with some science you found.
So the reverse of the process which we convert heat and light into matter is to create nuclear weapons. So that's what we already do to create nuclear weapons.
Okay, I kind of misheard you. So you're saying it's the reverse of the process by which we convert heat and light into matter. Yes. Okay, so how did they do that?
Reverse engineer our nuclear weapons.
Well, wait, okay, so keep going.
Okay.
You're at SEL would convert light into matter. I don't know what SEL is. I guess that's something you grabbed out of an article.
Right. It could create environments of extreme temperature and pressure, and the kind of conditions rarely exist naturally on Earth.
Yeah, that would be extremely dangerous. Like, I don't even know what the ramifications of that are, because there's some current studies I know of people who are trying to convert one into the other nowadays. I remember I was reading an article about this recently about how some scientists, I think in China, it's always China doing the cool stuff.
Well, you know I have stuff on China too for the other part when we get to the Pokedex.
Oh, yeah. Well, so China, they were, I think I'm pretty sure it was China. They were messing with trying to convert light energy that was like bouncing around in some box, something like that, and they converted it into like very, very small amounts of some matter. I don't remember what they ended up with, but they were trying to.
No.
Okay, gosh, no. Do you realize what would have to go into that?
I don't know.
But still, they were able to do that, and the problem is, how do we say it ended up being like a glob of like something like Jello? Okay. how do you know that that light before wasn't, I don't know, someone's eyeball? And I don't know, their planet was destroyed and that person fell into the sun and that little bit of their eyeball converted into light energy
and turned into jello
and aimed right at our solar system and happened to be going right towards these people in China who try and trap a little bit of light, and they do, and they convert it into not an eyeball. Right? It's because that information isn't going to be saved anywhere. So there's a whole lot to just trying to convert something.
We do believe that it is possible. It just takes a lot of energy. I mean, we've been theorizing about, converting light into matter since, 1934 we have here. One of the ways that they are, let's see, it says that 2 American physicists theorized that if one could make 2 photons collide, the collision would produce 2 positron-electron pairs, and thus convert the light into matter.
They theorized
that. Was a theorized,
and this is in 34. So
right.
We continue what you have there. It says, if proven in a lab, the process would be pure demonstration of Einstein's theory of relativity, which states that the mass of an object is also a measure of its stored energy. That's also just a theory, though.
Correct.
But,
yes. So that's
still,
all a theory, but then China was actually able to do a little bit of something.
They did something.
Little bit.
But that makes sense. I mean, there's only so much energy out there. That's the only thing that is limited in the universe. Energy. There's only so much.
Right.
And energy is either potential energy or kinetic energy, right? Or something like that. It's stored. And the potential that stored energy is matter. It's very compressed atoms and all that stuff just holding it together. Right, that's what makes it stronger.
Right.
Otherwise, it would be if you overcharge that or disintegrated it or disrupted that, then they've broken that law that held them together.
So I know we had discussed a little bit before also about that there might be a little bit of loss converting from the matter to the light to the light to the matter.
Yeah, when
so
I send
you said you had a good theory on this.
I did. So I was just gonna say. So when I send my deer out, it might only have 3 legs.
Right. Yeah. Like you're gonna start losing things. Even if it does have the exact formula for recreating that deer, it still is going to lose energy in the process.
I think it would be fine, though, because if we're assuming that the Pokeball is saving all the information of knowing exactly what it looks like, it could, by what I was gonna turn this whole thing into, basically reconstruct an identical clone that you would have never known wasn't that exact deer, because it can't really make that same deer. It could use all the same matter, right? So say if you had like a clay sculpture of like a tiger, and I smash it, I completely destroy it. You can completely reconstruct an identical tiger out of the same clay. Is it the same tiger?
Right, okay.
So, I mean, the Pokeball is sending it back out, and that might, we have
that kind of technology with printers, though. You can recreate something.
That's where I'm going with this.
Oh, okay.
We're basically looking at a Pokeball as an amazing, futuristic, organic 3D printer.
Okay.
Here's what I have on this.
All right.
This comes from Engadget.com. 3D printing isn't just for toys and models. Doctors at the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine announced yesterday, of course this is when it was published, that they managed to 3D print living tissue and organs that functioned properly when implanted in animals. The team, led by Anthony Atala, is already renowned for printing the building blocks for human bladders, but now they've researched another level entirely. They say it's possible to print structures large and strong enough for humans. They've printed muscle structures, bone and ear tissue so far, according to Nature. With a little more work, the technology could revolutionize the way we approach surgical replacements.
But that, and like the surgical replacements, that's a great idea. I'm just thinking futuristic-wise, what if we really want to do teleportation? We're essentially becoming 3D printers.
Hold on.
Then are we losing ourselves?
Slow down. No, to slowly dissect all that you were trying to just say. Yes, like starting to 3D print human organs for people.
That's wonderful.
That's amazing, because the biggest problem with organ donation now is you don't know if the host is going to reject the, say, the new, the kidney that's put in, right?
Or if maybe I'm just thinking of this on a TV show, or if maybe that organ contains some form of a disease that you didn't know about or something like that.
Sure, that's true. But the biggest problem is nature doesn't want you to take an organ from one thing and put it in another. Right. Generally, that doesn't work. So if you're able to grow a kidney that is your kidney, we got your DNA and we made your kidney again. So, or if something really happened and your ear was completely burned off, we can grow your ear.
Now, see, that makes me question something that's a little bit off topic. What if that eventually that organ started to deteriorate based on your genetics? Would that same new organ begin to do that same thing again?
I don't really understand the question. As soon as it's reattached to you, it's still going to be you. Like, there's this famous cancer blob that is from some woman, I think from like the 40s or 60s, who she had it removed, and by most, I mean every other case of this happening other than with this woman, whenever you remove something from the body, say like you cut your hair, you trim your fingernails, it dies, right? Even though fingernails and hair is already dead, whatever. Say you got your finger cut off, right? Ow. But the finger that was cut off isn't going to keep growing. It's not gonna, grow backwards and create another hand and then eventually, like, make a bird, right? It's not gonna do that. Right. So this cancer blob that was taken from this woman kept growing. And basically scientists were scooping parts of it and trading it, and they're using this blob of organic growing matter in order to test new viruses and ways to treat different illnesses, because it's constantly growing and we can treat with it, right? We can mess with it. So that does happen, of having something grow outside of the body, but once it's attached, it's gonna same thing with like an organ donation. If you put in the kidney, like right now, I'm gonna operate just fine, with the new kidney now, assuming the operation went well. So, but anyway.
I'm just saying, like, say you had kidney failure before, and now that...
Oh, you think it's gonna...
It's gonna begin to fail again after a certain amount of time.
That depends on what caused it initially, of what gave you the kidney
I'd
failure.
say if it was like a genetics issue.
If it was a genetics issue, then more than likely the technology they were using to create that kidney in the first place was involving CRISPR, something that...
That's what I was wondering. I was like, could CRISPR then eliminate that issue?
Yes, it would. CRISPR is a... I don't really want to dig into it too much right now because it's not so relevant. I'm sure we'll talk about it later. I don't even think
we've talked about Pokeballs for the last 5 minutes.
No,
so.
This is Pokeballs. And we need to get into teleportation still, so I'm trying to go really quick on this. Basically, it's a genetic manipulation, new form of crazy microbiology that we can do, where we can basically snip and change genes. It's totally undercutting it, but that's all. So you could actually take out the part of your genetic kidney failure and remove that in your new kidney. So, yes. Okay, so... Let's take all that,
that's how
and
we
let's
can
say,
fix that issue.
poof, the Pokeball can do all of that.
Yes.
And when it sends out this deer, it
is a clone of the previous deer.
Perfect clone.
Does that mean it still has memories? I would assume, because it has the same brain structure, right?
Okay, so memory is actually in your brain somewhere. Right. Sure, it's all kind of globular, and we've got certain sections, and the neurons are firing in different areas.
So we have the same syntaxes, the same liquid, the same... gray matter, we should be fine.
Yep, you can create the exact same thing. So,
but are you essentially killing this Pokemon then?
Every single time. You are killing it, and then you're reincarnating it.
Well, I guess that makes sense as to why it can faint, come back, and you can bring it back out. You take it to the Pokemon Center, and it
That's what I was getting at before. Enters. They're dead. They died, and you brought it back, because it was saved
never gonna look at Pokeballs
with a Pokeball. And now here's where I was going to go with this. Assuming we have this technology, you can now go to anything that was ever saved with a Pokeball. Say, for whatever reason, the President of the United States gets this first, right? Say, and we're like, okay, we're really worried that some terrorist group is going to kill the President of the United States. So we are going to save his information with this Pokeball. They save him. And then, say, next week, president is assassinated somewhere in a foreign country. It's okay. You just throw the Pokeball sound effect, psh, and president's back.
New president!
We made it an identical president before he went there. Or whenever the last point was where we backed up his information and saved him. Or you could perpetually keep him young, but it's technically a new one living each section. You couldn't, like, take the memory. You might be able to get picky. Eventually, you might be able to get picky and, like, take the memory.
Something about this just sounds miserable. Like,
but still, that's where I was getting into the bit of in the beginning about the reincarnation of your dead grandmother. Because once this gets commercialized, yes, you're reincarnating anybody who has been saved with a Pokeball. Anything that was alive, you can bring it right back again.
So we're believing that this could exist.
No, I'm saying if it could exist. That's a big. And this is really distant. I want to say 3D printer technology because this already says I have listened to a bunch of other stuff about 3D printer futuristic stuff. It's pretty crazy what they're doing. We could reconstruct these things, and we would basically need. It would take a long time. It would need to grow. In a flash of light like that, I don't know, but that of course.
In a small nuclear explosion.
Well, sure, but even regular printers and faxes was unheard of and crazy 100 years ago, right? So it's still something that maybe in the next 100 years they're already going to have this technology and look back and say, man, these people were calling each other with these little blocks that they put up to the side of their head that tried to, like, get reception from a really tall tower somewhere. Like, why didn't they just telepathically talk to each other? This idiot. They're going to have something, right?
Right.
So I can't anticipate that far out with new 3D printer technology, but for the sake of the Pokeball conversation, yes, it's reincarnating anyway. Okay. So the last big thing that happens with this Pokeball, let's say that deer we caught was the 7th Pokemon that we had in our party. We had 6 others with us. That ball that we are holding slowly starts to disintegrate. And what happens?
So then that Pokeball is then transferred into your box. Via your Pokedex.
I didn't know it was actually through the Pokedex.
Yes.
Is that what Bulbapedia says?
Yes, that is what Bulbapedia says. So I know I mentioned it at the beginning of this episode, but I kind of want to reread it again now that we're actually getting to it.
Yeah.
Pokeballs are able to communicate with a trainer's Pokedex. As the system updates itself with the information on newly caught Pokemon,
I think that's just the information
of how many Pokemon the trainer has.
Okay.
So if it has that information, it keeps track of things, it'll automatically send things back.
I think that's the Pokeball checking the other Pokeballs, not the Dex. That was like a comma and like a sub-sentence of what it was trying to say. That was 2 different things. It says the Pokeball is able to, and then it says 2 different things. And the second thing was, it's able to keep track of how many you have and then go back. It doesn't matter. Okay. It's able to do that. So it is immediately teleported.
Taking physical matter, teleporting it into digital matter.
And, yes.
And you can access this anywhere.
And the biggest part about this is it basically, we can talk about teleportation as one thing, but this teleported the teleporter.
Right.
And the contents.
Yes.
So it's not only taking the Pokeball's Pokemon in it, the Pokeball doesn't just stay with you. The Pokeball goes too.
Physically. But at least they get that right where you cannot just access your Pokeball from your Dex or anything like that and get it back. You have to go to a computer then.
Well, I think that's a game limitation because in actuality, if that technology existed, yes. Basically, here's my big question. In Pokemon, why can't I walk around with a laptop? Why can't I just pull it up and say, you know what, I forgot I really want strength for this cave. I'm going to put back my Gyarados and instead get a Machamp.
Maybe that's just only a downloaded software that only Poke Centers can purchase.
Okay, so it's a monopoly.
Yes.
All right, whatever.
So it's Adobe.
Oh, gosh.
So, being able to transfer that matter over long distances, once again, China has already started to do something like this.
Oh, China. So what do they got?
So, July of 2017, so last year, Chinese researchers were able to teleport a photon particle from the ground to a satellite.
A satellite.
A satellite.
Come on, slow down. You're all right.
Orbiting the Earth.
Yes.
So, that means they are sending physical light matter through the vacuum.
Well, actually, anything that's orbiting doesn't go through a vacuum. Actually, technically, even the ISS Space Center is not in space. It's in our atmosphere. It's just really high up.
Right.
Now, there's very, very super low atmosphere there. But if it was in the vacuum, it would probably, because it's not big enough, it probably wouldn't be orbiting us. You know, it would have to be a lot bigger in order to do that. So, the satellite that's up there that they sent it to was technically still on Earth, but still, whatever. Right. It doesn't matter. They teleported something.
They teleported an actual...
It's a photon particle, a photon particle is basically, it is matter. Correction, it's technically not matter, but for the sake of the conversation, moving on from here, it technically would still be considered matter because we are already assuming we are able to convert light energy and energies in general back into matter, so it's moving the transported information. It's the particles that are released that carry energy. Typically, from what I understand about them, they are the particles that you feel if like there's a campfire going and you feel the warmth. The fire doesn't make the air warmer. The fire is releasing photon particles, which they are carrying energy, which you interpret as being warm. So if somebody walks between you and the fire, you know it's instantly cold, even though you didn't get any farther from the fire. That doesn't make any sense. That's because the photons are being stopped.
Yeah.
So you know how if you stand in the shade from the sun and it's a little cooler there, it's not the air that's warm, it's the photon particles that you're not getting bombarded with anymore. So that's why you're a little cooler. So those things, they do have to travel through space. Like, it takes, I don't remember how long it takes photon particles from the sun to reach us. I think it's about 4 seconds. I could be wrong, like 4 to 8 seconds, somewhere in there. Yeah, I was way off. It's actually 8 minutes in 20 seconds. I was probably thinking of the moon and how long it takes light to come from the moon to Earth, which is somewhere around 1.3 seconds. But whatever. Like, I don't have that number pulled up.
But what this is kind of getting at is that we're finally being able to start using this method of teleportation for our own devices at this point.
If they can teleport something a little more impressive than a photon particle, yes.
Well, because, we're starting.
Yeah, that was step one. It was move a photon.
Move the photon.
So, yeah, they're starting.
I mean, now they're starting to work on more of an internet process that works with this same concept.
Sure.
So, what they use to create to perform this feat, I guess, is the theory of quantum entanglement, which means that one photon and another photon are connected and will mimic each other.
Yes.
Is the simple layman's way to put it.
So they didn't really teleport it. That would be a lot more complicated.
From what I heard, they used over 4,000 photons to get this one. So, from what I remember.
Oh, well, that could have been 3,999 failures to one success.
True. Yeah.
Okay, so that might be what they're talking about. I'm not entirely sure about that, but either way, I think that we're taking the baby steps on what's eventually going to be
teleportation.
Like a huge undertaking in science later. But for now, just because it's more fun to like figure out what would that do to the world, what would happen if we had teleportation right now? If that Pokeball existed. What do you mean?
Why would I be here?
Where would you be?
I don't know. Someplace warm. It's cold here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
I find it pretty warm in this room. I'm content
in this
here.
room. Okay.
I'm pretty content in this room, actually.
Actually, you know, one of the biggest things is that I've always wanted to use teleportation for being able to leave for work at the very last second.
Oh, jeez. I know. Yeah. Okay, but the big thing that I was writing in there in the beginning, if you guys remember, was Amazon's teleporter shipping options.
Right.
Could you imagine never going to the grocery store again? You imagine just if no one would ever leave their house unless they had to, and then they would teleport somewhere. Because why would you teleport the people first? You would teleport stuff.
Right.
That's a little less risky, right? So they're not going to teleport you to work first. The next step, once they actually start teleporting objects, is they're going to say, okay, you want me to teleport this wrench that you need to get this job done, and you'll rent that tool and teleport it right back.
Now, see, I've heard of things doing that with more of like a 3D printer, because they've done that with fruits, I believe.
With 3D printing fruit?
Yes, I believe I've heard that. Now, don't quote me on that one. I've heard that somewhere before.
Fruit's a lot less complicated than a kidney or an ear, so I can believe it. But still, that's.
I've heard them of like ordering something online and having it like
just
3D printed.
There it is.
There, yes, like a 3D printing fax machine.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know that stuff exists.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be something kind of like that, which is what I kind of imagine that these Pokeballs are doing, and that they're
teleporting. Yes, but the real question is, if the teleporter itself, unless it was able to wirelessly teleport something, and it's the box that's doing it, right?
Right.
Because I'm trying to think of something, because
so
you couldn't teleport the teleporter.
Yes, so it's the digital information that's teleporting itself.
Yes, I guess.
Which is a little weird versus when you use a physical piece of matter to scan and then print a physical piece of matter. You know, that's a little different than actually taking the matter and teleporting it physically to a digital.
Yes, but
thing.
You'd also be converting it into digital information, which is another can of worms of, like, taking this energy and converting it into digital information. But granted, that initial scan that was made from the Pokeball,
yes,
that is the digital information. That's all it needs. As long as it has enough information to perfectly clone that thing, then when you're looking through your Pokemon box and you see the little pictures of each one and their stats and all that, that's all the computer needed to know, because that Pokemon is dead.
Right.
And as soon as you say, you just push the little withdrawal, or let's just say reincarnate button, boop, there they are. Pokemon back to life again, and you have it.
So,
or you have it portably
in that case,
in a ball.
How they're given back to you in a ball.
Yeah.
We know that.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't just given back to you through the computer. You're not just yanking out your
area. But that Pokeball is just a nuclear-powered USB.
Correct, yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I'm like, is it giving you a new Pokeball every single time when you're pulling it out of this computer?
Well...
Or is, like, nurse...
You know, I don't know where the Pokeballs come from. Is the nurse giving you
a Pokeball and you connect it and now you have a new Pokeball with that in there?
You know, I never thought about where the physical Pokeball is going to come from in the computer, because... Here's the thing, you can deposit a Pokemon in Fuchsia City and then go to Cerulean City and withdraw not only the same Pokemon, but it's going to be in the same Great Ball that you caught that Mudkip in or something like that, right? Okay, you can't catch the horrible example. Starters, you can't, whatever. But still, Beautifly.
Zubat.
Okay? Zubat. Okay, it's something else. I don't know why I was all... I was all hoeing there for a second, but still, say it was something in a specific ball that you caught and you moved somewhere else, and it's going to be the same one that you pull back out again. Ugh, it's just... That would certainly screw up the world, especially if we had...
That would cost so much money. So what would...
So much power, too.
What if you would have to... I know this doesn't happen in a game, but what if you would have to purchase a new Pokeball from the nurse at the Pokemon Center to then download your Pokemon's data into the Pokeball again?
You know, that doesn't sound too far-fetched, though. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a monopoly. They clearly already have a monopoly with how the Pokeball works, and you can't bring a laptop with you. So instead, they're going to sell your Pokemon back to you when you had 6, because that was your mistake. It's a Google Drive service. You tell me they're not going to charge you for your space?
So what happens when you're going to the breeder, then?
The breeder? Oh, no, they're out of their Pokeball at that point. They're actually just getting fancy with, sticking parts into other parts.
But then do you... I guess you just use the same Pokeball again when you come to pick them up?
Oh, I'm sure you left the Pokeball there with them. It's a breeder service. I mean,
okay.
Why you don't need to... We don't need to get into the breeding services, but alrighty. Well, yikes. That was the Pokeball. That was a
long episode.
Yeah. Well, at least we got to cover all of it for crying out loud. We have a lot more science-y video game related stuff coming up in other episodes in the near future. We also have a couple new series that we're going to be starting that are kind of similar to this. We were going to have another mini-series that was going to appear at the end of these episodes, basically making fun of the science of the screwed-up Pokedex, and we knew that this series in particular, Do You Physics, is going to take so much time to talk about that there's no way we can throw Pokemon entries at the very end of it. We'd be discrediting them. So instead, that's going to be its own series coming soon. It's going to be called the Pokedex Paradox, so keep your eyes open for that one. But for now, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time for some new game science. Be sure to follow us on either YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you all in the next episode of Do You Physics?